Hello ratbags, welcome to my review of Last Oasis. It's not going to be concise, it's going to be me just talking about the good stuff. I'm not a professional reviewer, but I do want to give you my opinions on why I'm loving this game at the moment. It's going to be filled with good stuff to talk about, why it solves so many of the problems that other player versus player games have, and why I think it's got a bright future. That doesn't mean I'm going to ignore some of the criticism that maybe is due. It definitely needs a little bit of work, and I do want to talk about what I think it should add for the future as well. So I left it this long. I really wanted to get some hours under my belt, 132 hours to be precise. That's quite a lot for me considering all the other stuff I have to do running a channel that's based on news and guides, especially multi-game. So I'm pretty proud I've put that hours in. We've got a huge clan going on now. Well, 50 members deep, that's pretty big for me too. We're strong, we're united, and we've got big plans. So if you do want to come and join our clan, hit us up in Discord, find the Last Oasis chat in my Discord, enter the details that are in the pinned messages and come and join as we take on and try and take over more and more tiles. But let's crack on with the actual review. Last Oasis is a territory game where you play against other players trying to take over tiles or maps with your clans. It is heavily focused on PvP and multiplayer. Imagine Eve but with these huge walkers on desert landscapes instead of being in space. The ability to control and try and vie for the areas and territories is going to be a big part of the politics that surround the game. If you're a solo player, you're someone that just likes PvE elements, this game may not be for you, but that doesn't mean you can't play it. There are definitely improvements that have been made in the last couple of weeks. I just wish some of the improvements had been there straight away. I think it would have kept a lot of PvE players interested. Instead, they got scared of what happens in a lot of these games. Big, huge clans come and just wipe out people at every left turn. But Last Oasis does so much. As I said at the beginning, it solves so many problems. It is a nomadic survival game where you run around these servers trying to basically take over, building up your clans, unlocking technology and basically leveling up your walkers. These walkers are the lifeblood of the game. You will upgrade them, you will put armaments on them, you will put weapons on them, and you will try and take out other walkers and get to their stashes. These can be small little scout-like vehicles, or they can be huge floating bases that literally run around the desert lands. This is such a strong point for this game and why I can't recommend it enough. I've put a bit of time into games like Ark and Rust and Conan. I've never really played too much PvP in them games because I don't really want to waste my time and get wiped out very quickly, and I feel like it's a bit of a waste at occasions, especially with some of them games having really broken mechanics and really broken ways of PvP. Especially offline. If you're completely new to Last Oasis, you haven't seen any info about it, it solves that problem because you can take your mobile base with all its resources on your walker and log it off the tile, log it off the server. No one is going to be able to offline raid you. You can still get raided though, and it does happen frequently because you're caught off guard and you're not planning and looking around you. That's a real good aspect that I love about this game. If you're prepared, if you're doing things the right way, there is an existence for solo players or PvE players, but it definitely needed a little bit more work. We'll go into that in a little bit, but I still want to talk about the plus points of no offline raiding. Every game you've ever played like this, you've pretty much never lost because you've had open combat on your dinosaurs in Ark or open combat on PvP in Conan. You've lost because while you was asleep, some sweaty little trial 12-year-old has gone and blown up your base with C4 or explosive jars. And so I just can't say it enough. I love this idea that you just log off your bases. Now if you're worried it gets a bit boring, maybe it gets a bit too quiet and there's not enough contact, it's got bundles of it. You will always come across other players while going across servers and maps. There is always a chance for combat. Alongside that no offline combat, they do add timers. So if you get attacked on your walker and it takes damage, you've got a few minutes that you have to shake it off. You have to escape to the edge of the maps. That is another cool mechanic that I love about it, that you really have to plan it, and maybe there is an escape route for you if you come into trouble. You have to get sand out of your gears, which pretty much stops you from just logging off as soon as you've got a chance. You have to really be careful of what you take on, whether or not you're going to go out for someone or whether or not you're going to retreat and come back later with more forces or better equipped walkers. The balance is just perfect. I've played some other games recently like Memories of Mars that have PvP zones, and it's just boring as shit. You rarely come across players in that place because they don't make it attractive enough or interesting enough for players to go to them zones. Last Oasis still has hot zones too. On the hard maps that have more difficult resources and some more challenges, you have to go there to craft some of the higher end tablets, which are pretty much currency to unlock some of the bigger upgrades. And so this means there's always going to be choke points where you could come into contact with bigger clans, bigger tribes, and always be ready for a battle. There are so many different ways to play this game. You can play it as a roaming band of pirates, never settling on one server, always travelling from one server to another, making sure you've got plenty of water. Water is the main resource that you're going to gather and keep with you. It helps you respawn when you die or killed in combat. It also means that you can travel to other servers. Maybe you want to be a landowner. Well, Last Oasis does have servers that periodically get reset or wiped out. The lore of the story is that you are on a small strip of land where the earth has kind of stopped rotating, and so either side of you you've got really dense cold or really hot scorching sun, and so this little strip that kind of just about moves a little bit means that you always have to be on the move, and this means that you can have a server for a while. Since launch they haven't announced the plans to wipe them, but during the beta and during all the informational videos they said they're going to have a big choice in different tiles having different timers. Some servers might only last an hour, some servers might last up to 2 or 3 weeks. Then that makes it worth it, you settling on a server. Another great feature is that when you settle on a server, when you've put up a specific wallcard that will do the job and make it your home tile, you collect taxes. And this is something that harmed the progress of this game, or harmed the perception of it at launch. They didn't have these servers available where you could go and get this stuff, or where you could earn the right to have a proxy, as it's called. And so it meant that a lot of PvE Care Bears, a little solo players, couldn't see the bigger picture or what was coming in the future, and they felt like they were just getting zerged a lot. Zerged is pretty much when 50 people will be on one little walker and just roll you over completely, overwhelming you because of their player base. This would have been more substantial, much better for the game's image if they had it in place straight away. Why? Well, the taxes that you collect from other players don't directly come out of their pocket. It's an additional 10% that gets generated. Not only that, from resources wise, you also get a 10% in-game currency or so coming from sales. This means that bigger clans have an incentive to protect players. You get bonuses. If a player stays alive for 12 hours, he starts contributing a tax and starts contributing the in-game currency to your hordes. And this is why it's so important to protect people that are playing on your server. So you can become land barons, you can become land owners, and it's your job just to make sure no one is getting killed by raiding pirates. If you're successful, it means you get more bonuses from them and more of them resources being harvested for you that go inside your proxy or your big walker. I'm simplifying some of this a little bit because I'm trying to draw in a lot of people that may not have picked up Last Oasis. This is obviously a review, it's not for the players that are knee deep in it and know every inch, mince or bit of it. This is really to try and entice some of them players that play Ark, that play Conan, that maybe even play games like Rust, particularly if you play Atlas. Now this is something I'm going to bring up quite a bit. I won't bore you guys too much, but let's just say that Atlas, after a rocky start, then had periods of inactivity and where the player base dropped quite a bit, but it had some good ideas in terms of how you build your ships, in terms of some of the combat options, in terms of some of the more nitty gritty stuff that's to do with farming and gathering resources. It had some great ideas. The trouble was though, it would take you literally 8 hours to get across the map to go and find a specific resource that grew in the north. Last Oasis doesn't have that problem just yet. It's got very simplistic maps and servers. Easy, medium and hard. The easy servers are pretty much where you start off. They're cradle servers that pretty much go through the tutorial, and they've got a mediocre of protection so that you don't lose as many items if you get killed up to a certain level. Once you're ready to progress, you go to the medium servers, and this is where you'll spend a lot of your time. This is where you might take over an area and it'll be your tile. Then you've got the hard servers. These are the ones that have got the tablet making devices, otherwise known as fabricators. These are where you're going to be going. The ancient ruins where you have to make these tablets which upgrade walkers, which unlock new ability or items and armors and stuff, and so you always come into contact with other players. If they'd had all of this stuff at launch, I think a lot of players would have been happier. As I said, a lot of solo players and PvE players, although this game has never been marketed towards them, so I don't understand why they cried so hard, But if this had been there in the start, where they felt like they'd be protected by bigger clans, I think we would have got even more of a positive reception. Right now, Last Oasis is sitting on a 68% mostly positive score. It says mixed, but that to me means more people like the game than don't, and I think it's doing well. The player numbers are stable. It's dropped obviously from its launch, and of course the launch did go a little bit badly. After a good few days of testing it just beforehand with streamer access, as soon as the big amount of players hit, it hit huge problems. There was a massive mistake they had with their master server, and it meant that no one was able to play the game for 7 days. That will kill any sort of momentum. But instead of just bunking down and ignoring the problem, the devs responded. They spoke about the issues and they promised they'd be back. And since then, I haven't found any of them style issues. The performance on the servers is pretty good, and I have to say that as an early access game, it's one of the most well developed and well rounded ones I've played at launch. For a little bit of perspective, I'm up to like 3,000 videos on my channel. I've covered every survival game there is on a console, and any brand big new ones that have come out in the last few years, I've played them on PC. I can't always put hundreds of hours into them, but I have seen so many of these games launch. I recognise what they do good and recognise what they do bad. Donkey Crew just nearly had it perfect. If it wasn't for that problem with the master server, I still think there'd be a hell of a lot more players still playing it right now. And if they had made the way that you can have tiles with taxes and protection for smaller clans and solo people, I think this game would still be benefiting from a much bigger feel-good factor. Okay, so I've spoken about why I love the idea of PvP and why it solves the offline problem, but what about the actual running of the game? How does it work in terms of actual combat? It's great, it's directional, so there's a skill level to it. It's not just about having a certain thing or a certain way of playing. Although there are obviously metas, it makes it much more based on your skill than any of the other games I've ever played before. Instead of just putting 100 points in speed in arc and running around and no one's ever able to kill you, instead of just always going for the same loot options in Rust, instead of always going for the same builds in Conan, Last Oasis has a little bit more nuance. You can go out there, you've seen them already, the videos where 2 man take on 50 players and manage to somehow beat them all. It's a great start. I do have some issues with that combat style. It does need a little bit more refinement so the camera doesn't feel like I'm having a fit every time I get into combat. Maybe that's just my playstyle. I guess it's just about you getting used to it, and it can be a bit jarring with the way that you're swinging sometimes if it doesn't feel like you've got full control. But I would say it's a great start for this, and I like the idea that the skill-based combat is a real feature rather than just relying on massive meta builds or only one way to play. There are metas in the game in terms of unlocking certain weapons that currently are doing the best damage, or certain armors that people tend to wear, and you're never going to avoid that or get around that. But definitely Last Oasis feels like it's much more balanced than some of the other games I've played in the past. In terms of skills and stuff, you earn experience, you unlock player skills in damage, in health, in stamina and in mobility. It's not too OP. There are some good builds out there, and there's definitely people that might be sinking it all into one thing or another, but it never feels like you're going up against something superhuman. And I love the fact that items, walkers, gear, weapons, armor is all tied to either tablets or fragments. Now fragments are pretty much what you harvest from killing the enemies in the game, the Rupu. Now they're pretty simplistic, these guys. There's variations of them. They do various different damage and some of them have various different attacks, and I probably reckon that's the weak point of the game so far. It doesn't have enough varied wildlife, enough varied creatures. I'm not talking like Ark with 200 dinosaurs, but something approaching close to something like Conan, where the world does feel a little bit more dangerous when you're running around. But then that means you're taking away the focus from the players, and the players are the most dangerous creatures in this game. You'll never know when all of a sudden you'll get invaded by a group and you have to pack up your bases and get them offline so you can get your fighting gear on. That's what I love about this game. But definitely for sure, I'd like to see more creatures come into the game in future. I'm going to cover this a little bit more at the end. But yeah, it's part and parcel of the game that you harvest, you gather and try and get fragments. Enough of these fragments unlocks abilities, or not abilities but armors and weapons and stuff, and then eventually if you want the end game stuff, you convert them fragments into tablets. And this is where the meta starts building in, where some of its key systems are there. When do you go and get your tablets? Try and find the quiet times when no one's on the server as much, go in big armadas, trying to take on anyone that's defending the ancient stations that you craft them at. It all just makes something quite exciting, and it means that there's more combat involved if you want it. If you always want something going on, hang around one of them areas and you'll always have combat. There's different play styles that suit people. Maybe you want to be a farmer. There is a life for you in this game. If you're a solo player or PvE player, you can return to this game. If you saw negative things about it, yes, there is always going to be a chance of a big, huge amount of players overtaking you. But if you're on a good server now that's run pretty well like we run ours, we protect anyone that's on our server because we want you to gather resources. I want you to give me the 10% extra tax in terms of resources and the money that goes towards our station. And this is a big key feature. So farmers, come and enjoy the game. Go and farm and do stuff. Experience life what it's like as a solo nomad and see if you can build it. There will be limitations to what you can do. You're never going to be able to unlock some of these big walkers unless you group up with someone else. And really, they're a bit useless if you're only on your own. It's all about your clan size, and depending on what walker you use, you've got to have a big clan if you want some of them big walkers. It does have its drawbacks though for PvE element. There's definitely still need a bit of work, not just with the creatures and enemies that will attack you, but also more resources, more different biomes. Obviously they've got this coming in, they've got event servers planned very soon which will open up another tier of difficulty and more harder to get resources that we've not really seen in the game just yet, like iron. But it definitely needs a big choice. I would love to see more really experimental biomes. I understand the lore that the sun has kind of burnt off a lot, but maybe some real jungle areas. That would be pretty interesting to see what was going on, and just a bit more spice to that sort of stuff. There's a good meta in terms of gathering and harvesting. You find resources that have got higher quality, and when you gather these resources with higher quality weapons or armors or tools, then you can build even better walkers. You can build better all sorts of resources, armors and weapons if you gather the higher resources. And so it adds a bit of meta. There's a bit of calculation and a bit of maths in trying to work out what level you can build your walker. The higher the resource, the better your walker comes out and the more slots it has for modules. It's a way of upgrading your walkers so that you can add things to it, like it picks up wood with the legs when you go over trees, or maybe some of them reduce the weight so you can carry more. There's all sorts of modules to go through, and this is what ends up being kind of the systems, the loops that people will be going for. Conan's got its own loops with lots of story content, lots of dungeons and taking on stuff like that. Ark has got its loops with its breeding and its taming. Last Oasis, the loop right now is about getting them better resources and that tablet grind. To sustain itself a bit longer though, and to draw in more PvE players, which I think can live with the PvP crowd, it definitely needs something more. It needs, I don't want to say taming, I don't want to see this become an Ark simulator where you just tame creatures, but I definitely think there's room. Maybe smaller little mounts, maybe like chocobo style creatures, something where we've got creatures where we can farm them, where we can utilize resources that they may give us without just having to kill them. There's literally only 2 or 3 creatures in the game right now. It definitely needs more. They've got some boss event creatures like a giant crab or a giant anteater style elephant, the koa, but it definitely needs more to make the world feel just a little bit more vibrant. Of course, the biomes that are there are fantastic. I love the mixture that when you come off of the dunes, go into the valleys, all of a sudden you're in a misty, dark little mini wood. And the hard maps have got their own atmosphere with lots of pine trees all around before you hit the volcanic ashlands. So it's really good what they got there. As I said, it's one of the strongest early access starts I've seen, but it could definitely do with more of that going forward. I want to see big, expansive, more different biomes. I want to see more creatures added to the game to really entice PvE players into it, to feed the ecosystem while the PvP big boys go to battle. When it comes to them battles, it's crazy. It can be chaotic. Trying to organise a big clan like we've been doing, there have been some teething issues. We've lost a few when we started out, but we're starting to get more and more organised. And when you run into another walker on your walker, when everyone's firing off your repeater ammo and trying to harpoon it and stop it getting away, when you pull off a leg off an enemy's walker, there's no better feeling. Honestly, it's some of the best systems, the best clan warfare I've ever played. Atlas, I played a bit of time into that and it was just horrible. It was just pretty bad. It felt like you could just get lucky with blueprints. There wasn't no real rhyme or reason to it. And even though the shipbuilding in that game was good, it ended up still people just building loads of land bases and getting offline raided. And as I said, Last Oasis solves that problem. you can make sure you've got the best walker going. You can go out and have a fight, but if you need to retreat, as long as you've got the brains to get out there and hide or run away, you can do so. You don't have to lose every single item on you. You don't have to lose all your progress if you play the game smart enough. If you spend too long in the Discord of Last Oasis, you'll see a bunch of people complain and moan about this bug, that bug and everything else. It is early access, it's designed for this, to collate and gather all these bugs and hopefully fix them over time, as well as get feedback. And what I've just seen though, since these last 4 weeks, has been a game that has really tried not to be like every other survival game out there. It's tried to be its own beast, it's got some things it's got to work on, particularly performance. Now that bases are getting put onto the maps a lot more, we've got bigger tribes, bigger clans. As soon as you start getting more than 10 walkers on the map, out on screen at any one time, with lots of structures, slowdowns starting to happen, lag starting to happen, etc. That's to be expected. I don't think there's any game out there that's managed to solve that problem. Going forward, it definitely needs more options for clans, so you can be more nuanced in how you work it. It's a bit crap at the moment, the system that you can have stuff for your clan available, you can have stuff for personal, but the minute you try changing stuff around, sometimes it kind of breaks it, or you can't pack up certain bases because that you're not owned by that walker. It's just a bit of a cluster truck. It needs more options for the clans. I like the way that the inventory system works. The UI is pretty simplistic. I like it, it fits well. The way that you upgrade the walkers is good. I see a big call out for maybe more nuance in the weapons and armor. Instead of just making them a little bit more quicker or more durable, I want to see more effects. Conan does that pretty well with bleed damage, with sunder damage, sort of heavy ammo damage or armor damage. That's the kind of stuff I would like to see putting in to Last Oasis to make the weapons really stand out from each other a bit more. And already the devs are countering and making some of the issues I've got go away. It's been pretty easy to lose all your resources or respawns on a walker while you're getting attacked, and then you just respawn very close by, and it means that you've got this constant annoyance that even though you've won a battle, you've still got naked nomads coming after you and just distracting you or trying to get to their stuff in their base as you try and break in. They've adjusted that and made it much longer to respawn now, and that's the way it should be. If you've managed to best someone in open battle, you've took down their walker, you've killed all their respawns, then you should be able to get to their loot no problems unless they're going to call on backup. It shouldn't be a case of being distracted by multiple people respawning very close. So that's one way they're solving issues. It also presents the issue that you've got to use the bigger walkers more. More people just still using the smaller stiletto style ones because you can get lots of people on them, you've got enough respawns and people can respawn nearby. But now it makes more sense to have a bigger walker that's got more respawns. The bigger the walker usually, the more water it can carry, and that means you can respawn more ready to go. And that's another feature I love. You can put gear and items in slots, and as soon as you respawn, you'll be equipped and ready to go, so you can help your battle mates while you're getting attacked. It's just another feature I just don't see in any other game. If, like me, you've been burnt by some of the big survival PvP games in the past, like Atlas, like Ark, like Conan, I would say Last Oasis offers truly the next step, the next way that some of these games should be looking if they ever make something more. No more offline raiding, but coming up with a way that's not just PvP zones. Last Oasis have nailed it for me. The combat is there if you want it. You can live your life as a pirate, you can live your life as a land baron, you can live your life as a solo player. You've just got to learn how. The trick for Donkey Crew right now though is to keep things interesting and keep stuff coming in, content on a 2-3 week basis, otherwise we will see lots of drops in the player base. It happens with lots of games nowadays. Unless that game has got a substantial energy behind it, it's just not going to have a huge player base always. Look at Scum, 1 million players bought copies of the game in the first 4 weeks, yet within 2 months it lost 95% of its player base. This is a problem that all games have nowadays. There's too much choice out there and there's too many of these style games that not everyone's committing to one game or another. But for sure, I think if you spent any time in any of the games I've mentioned, you absolutely must try Last Oasis. I think it's now the king of PvP games. Don't get me wrong, you still have loads of time in Rust, but if you really like proper combat, if it's skill based, if it's not based on offline raiding or some tower defense dino game, then Last Oasis is the one for you. It hasn't got the move or feature sets of Conan and some of the intricacies of the crafting in that, but it's going towards that direction, the way that you have to make multiple resources and then refine them resources again to get some of the higher end gear, and that adds a little bit more of them systems, them loops into it, and I like to see them concentrate on that even more. More resources, more creatures, more sort of enemy types or things to do while you're not fighting against other players, and I think Last Oasis is going to be big this year. I hope it carries on. I'm going to keep on supporting it as much as possible. More resources, more creatures, more sort of enemy types or things to do while you're not fighting against other players, and I think Last Oasis is going to be big this year. I hope it carries on. I'm going to keep on supporting it as much as possible. If you've got any criticism of the game, genuine, let me know in the comment section what you think it needs to improve though. Don't just say it's crap. Let me know what you don't like and what you think they could do to fix it. I am JPG, I am loving this game. It's unusual for me to give something a really good positive glow, but I can't recommend this enough. I will see you ratbags on my server when you come and join my crew. Otherwise, at least like some of the videos I put out on it. Until next time, laters. They're still currently working on private servers. Hopefully that will be implemented soon so people can practice or just start having fun on their own. I worry that if it does go too close too much to private servers, people will get very bored of the game. There definitely isn't enough to do if you're not PvPing at all. I don't think it's going to keep people entertained long enough. But for sure, private servers will add ability to test stuff out and have a little bit of fun with big groups or clan mates. If you've got any criticism of the game, genuine, let me know in the comment section what you think it needs to improve though. Don't just say it's crap. Let me know what you don't like and what you think they could do to fix it. I am JPG, I am loving this game. It's unusual for me to give something a really good positive glow, but I can't recommend this enough. I will see you ratbags on my server when you come and join my crew. Otherwise, at least like some of the videos I put out on it. Until next time, laters.